You reach a certain age, and you start to think life can't surprise you anymore. Not after you've lived through wars, watched your friends come and go, worked 30 years in the Houston shipyards. Still, every Christmas morning always felt sacred to me, no matter what state or how many miles separated my family. This year, I was looking forward to celebrating it in Austin with my only daughter, her new husband, and his parents. I'd spent months planning everything, wanting it to be perfect, down to booking a week-long luxury cabin retreat in Aspen. Just 7 days, the whole family together, away from the Texas humidity and stress. As always, I was the first one awake. I wandered into the kitchen, half expecting to hear the sound of bacon sizzling, maybe a whiff of cinnamon rolls from the oven, those little traditions that mean family is close by. My granddaughter, Emily, would usually be the first to bounce down the stairs, her laughter already filling the house before dawn. But that morning, the silence was different. The kind that seeps into your bones when you live alone for too long. On the kitchen table sat a folded letter, the kind people leave when they're too afraid to say what's on their minds. My name, Grandpa Mike, was written on the front. I sat down, the chair still pulled out from last night's dinner. The handwriting was neat, definitely my daughter's. It read, "Dad, we decided to head to San Diego for Christmas. We need a break, just us. Please don't worry about the money. You're always so generous. Thank you for everything. We'll see you January 2nd. Love, Jessica." I stared at the note for a long time, letting the words settle. No laughter, no footsteps, just me and the quiet hum of the refrigerator. I walked through every room, calling out, "Jessica? Ryan? Mrs. Thompson?" But every door was open, every bed half made, the closets stripped of suitcases. They were gone. I tried calling Jessica, straight to voicemail. Ryan's phone rang once, then nothing. Even his parents, Gary and Donna, didn't answer. Each unanswered call made the silence inside the house feel heavier, more final. By the door, I saw my spare truck keys untouched. They'd called a rideshare instead of taking my pickup. Made sure I couldn't follow or interrupt. I slumped into my old recliner and stared at the family photo on the mantel. Last year's Christmas, everyone smiling, arms around each other, pretending nothing was wrong. 3 months earlier, I'd announced the Aspen trip over a Sunday barbecue. Jessica was still rebuilding after her divorce, and Ryan's folks hadn't traveled in years. I wanted to give them something special, a memory we'd talk about for decades. 7 days, everything paid for, skiing, fine dining, the works. "Dad, you're amazing," Jessica had said, hugging me, tears in her eyes. "This is what we all need." Now I wondered just how long she'd been planning to leave me out. The minutes stretched into hours. The Christmas tree blinked in the corner, colored lights glimmering off presents tagged. "To Ryan from Grandpa," and "For Emily, with love." I'd wrapped every single one myself, picturing their faces when they opened them. The stockings Jessica had hung over the fireplace last night still dangled, mocking me with their emptiness. My phone buzzed, my neighbor, old Pete. "Merry Christmas, Mike. Hope the family's making it a good one." I didn't answer. What could I say? That my family had disappeared, leaving only a note and a mountain of unspent love behind? I poured a mug of coffee, not out of hunger but habit, and sat at the kitchen table. The trip's receipt folder sat in the drawer. Every reservation, every deposit, every expensive dinner and sleigh ride I'd booked. The total, $19,000. I'd saved all year for it, convinced it would be the perfect legacy. But now it was just a number. A promise broken. I picked up the phone and called the Aspen Resort. My hands shook as I waited for someone to answer. "This is Mike Sanders. My family was supposed to check in last night under my reservation. I need to make changes." The voice on the other end was polite. "Mr. Sanders, your family seemed very excited when they arrived. How can I help you?" I want to cancel everything but the basic rooms. Spa, dinner, ski lessons, the wine tour, all of it. Put the extra charges on their card instead. I'm done paying for their fun. She hesitated, then said she'd process it. I hung up and finally felt a sliver of peace. For the first time, I wasn't cleaning up anyone's mess but my own. I went to my study, opened a battered file marked Family Support. Inside, decades of records, Jessica's college tuition, Ryan's car loan, Emily's medical bills, birthday checks, emergency loans. Line after line of my generosity, stretching back to when Jessica was just a kid. But what hurt wasn't the money, it was realizing nobody had ever asked how I felt about being left behind. They just assumed I'd keep giving, keep sacrificing, as if gratitude was a given. As I looked out the window at the quiet Austin street, snowflakes drifting from a rare Texas storm, my house had never felt so empty. I sat there for a long time, my hands wrapped around a mug of coffee gone cold, watching the snow gather along the sidewalk. Christmas in Austin almost never brought snow, but this year felt like a sign, like life was reminding me that sometimes even the familiar can turn strange and cold overnight. By mid-morning, I tried calling Jessica again, then Ryan, then Gary and Donna. Voicemail every time. I scrolled through our old group texts, rereading messages about Christmas menus and ski trip excitement, back when it still felt like we were a family. My last message, "Can't wait to see you all, safe travels," felt almost cruel now. No reply. Just blue bubbles drifting into the digital void. When I finally got up from the table, it was just to move through the house in a daze. Jessica's old room, now set up for Emily when they visited, was empty except for a forgotten toy, her favorite stuffed elephant, left behind like an afterthought. In the guest bathroom, Ryan's electric razor was gone. The closets were half empty, bare hangers swinging, as if the house itself had been stripped of life overnight. I found myself in the living room again, staring at the wall of photos, Jessica in her cap and gown, Ryan and Jessica on their wedding day, Emily's beaming face on her first birthday. Decades of giving, of making sure they never had to struggle the way I did growing up on the east side of Dallas. I remember Jessica's tears after her divorce, how she called me every night just to talk, how I'd driven all night once just to be there for her when she didn't want to be alone. I'd always said yes, helped with bills, co-signed car loans, even covered medical emergencies for Emily. Because that's what family does, right? That's what a dad is for. Now, the only thing I had to show for it was silence. My neighbor Pete knocked on the back door around noon. "Hey Mike, just checking in. Merry Christmas." He handed me a tin of homemade cookies. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Thanks, Pete. Family left early. Change of plans." Pete's eyes flickered with sympathy, but he didn't press. We sat in the kitchen for a while, talking about old times, fishing trips, Astros games, the way the city used to feel smaller and friendlier. I didn't mention the Aspen trip, or the note, or the gnawing sense of betrayal that settled deeper every minute. After Pete left, I went back to the kitchen table. The Aspen receipts sat in front of me, staring up in neat columns. Flights, rooms, activities, dinners. $19,000. Money I'd planned to spend on memories, now just a painful reminder of everything I'd lost. I stared at my checkbook, running totals in my head: $60,000 for Jessica's house down payment, $50,000 in college loans, $40,000 in medical bills for Emily. Birthday gifts, holiday dinners, vacations, small loans that never got repaid. Hundreds of thousands, a lifetime spent giving. The phone rang late in the afternoon. Bill Evans, my old buddy from the shipyard. "Mike, you alright? Heard you were having the whole clan in for Christmas." I wanted to lie, say everything was fine. Instead, the words spilled out before I could stop them. "They left, Bill. Just left a note and disappeared. Didn't even say goodbye." There was a pause, the sound of Bill taking it in. "You want some company?" he asked. I'll be over in a bit with a bottle of something strong. Bill showed up within the hour. We sat in the living room, sipping bourbon, trading stories. I told him everything: Aspen, the note, the silence. Bill listened, nodded, poured another drink. You've always been the glue, Mike. You held that family together. Maybe it's time to let them learn what it's like when the glue is gone. That night, after Bill left, I wandered the halls of my house, collecting reminders of a family that seemed more like a memory with each passing hour. I pulled out an old box from the closet, filled with Jessica's childhood drawings, cards from Father's days long past, notes she'd written as a little girl. I love you, Daddy, you're my hero. I wondered when that little girl disappeared, when thank you became, what else can you give? I spent the evening at my desk, tallying up every check, every wire transfer, every loan. The numbers stunned me: over $350,000 spent on Jessica, Ryan, and Emily since Jessica turned 18. All those years of saying yes, of trying to make up for lost time after her mom passed away, of trying to fill the holes money can't fill. Finally, I pulled out a legal pad and started a letter. Not an angry letter. Not a list of complaints. Just the truth as I saw it. Jessica, I found your note. I want you to know I understand why you made your choice. You wanted time with your family, without me. I'm not angry, but I am disappointed. I've given everything I have so you could have the life I never did. Love isn't just about gifts or money. It's about respect. You accepted my gift and left me out. That was your choice. But I have to make mine now. Love. Dad. I left the letter on the kitchen table, next to the unused Aspen itinerary and the pile of unopened presents. Outside, the snow kept falling, covering the world in white, erasing footprints, making everything new again. For the first time in years, I let myself feel the full weight of loneliness. But mixed with the hurt was a strange sense of relief. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop buying my place at the table. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows, glinting off the ornaments on the still-lit Christmas tree. I woke earlier than usual, sleep coming and going in restless waves. My mind kept replaying Jessica's note, her careful handwriting, and the cold finality of her decision. The coffee pot sputtered, filling the kitchen with its familiar aroma, but even that comfort felt hollow. I checked my phone, no messages. Not from Jessica, not from Ryan or his parents, not even from Emily. For a moment, I wondered if I'd wake up to a flurry of apologies, an explanation, anything. But the phone stayed silent, as if the whole world had agreed to forget about me overnight. By 9, I was sitting at my desk, flipping through a manila folder labeled Family Support. Every page was a record of sacrifice: canceled vacations, overtime paychecks funneled into Jessica's tuition, the time I refinanced the house to help her cover her first mortgage. There were cards from Emily, crayon hearts and "I love you, Grandpa," scrawled in shaky letters. I held them like artifacts from another life. For a while, I tried to distract myself. I fixed a loose doorknob in the hallway, cleaned out the fridge. But everywhere I looked, I saw reminders: the extra beds I'd made up, the place settings for Christmas dinner, the untouched pile of gifts under the tree. Even the dog, Max, wandered from room to room, sniffing for the familiar chaos of family. Around lunchtime, my phone finally rang. For a heartbeat, my heart jumped, hoping it was Jessica. But the screen flashed the name: Bill Evans. I picked up, forcing a cheerful tone. "Morning, Bill. You get any sleep?" he asked. "Some. Not much," I admitted. "I was thinking about what you said last night," Bill said. "About all you've given them. It's time you did something for yourself. You know, I heard about a guy on the radio. His family ditched him on Christmas, and he called off a $20,000 vacation. You did the right thing, Mike." I half laughed. "Doesn't feel right. Just feels empty." "That's grief," Bill replied. You don't get over it in a day. But listen, you ever think maybe you set the bar too high? Sometimes the more you give, the more people expect. And when you finally say no, they act like you've betrayed them. His words stung with the truth. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and started an email to the Aspen Resort, confirming the cancellations. The reply came within an hour. The rooms were still reserved, but all extra activities were now off. Any further charges would have to be covered by the guests directly. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the satisfaction of that small boundary settle in. For years, I'd been the man who always fixed things, always smoothed things over with a credit card and a smile. Now, for once, I was letting the consequences fall where they belong. By early afternoon, I decided to get out of the house. I grabbed my coat, walked down the street to the little neighborhood park where Jessica used to play. The swing set creaked in the breeze, patches of snow sparkling on the ground. A young couple walked by, their laughter echoing, their son chasing after a stray football. For a second, I saw myself in them, young, hopeful, convinced that family was forever. On the way home, I stopped at the mailbox. Among the usual bills and junk, there was a card from Emily, addressed in her careful handwriting. My heart squeezed as I tore it open. Dear Grandpa, I can't wait to see you at Christmas. I love you so much. I'm going to make you a snowman. Love, Emily. The innocence of her words cut through all the adult drama, reminding me of the only thing that still mattered: love freely given, without strings attached. I set the card on the mantel, a promise to myself that I wouldn't let bitterness swallow up the good memories. Back inside, I found myself staring at the phone again. The urge to call Jessica was overwhelming, to beg for an explanation, to try and fix what had been broken. But I stopped myself. For once, I needed to let her come to me. As evening fell, I cooked myself a simple dinner: fried eggs, toast, and black coffee. The kind of meal I used to make when times were tight. I ate at the kitchen table, the silence broken only by the ticking clock and the distant sound of kids playing in the street. I thought about my own father, a man of few words who taught me to measure love not by what you say, but by what you do. After dinner, I sat at my desk, updating the spreadsheet where I tracked every dollar I'd spent on Jessica and her family. Northwestern tuition, $60,000. Down payment for their Austin house, $60,000. Monthly support, $40,000. Emily's medical bills, $12,000. Aspen trip, $19,000. A lifetime's worth of generosity, now just numbers on a page. The total stunned me, over $300,000. More than I'd ever dreamed I could give. I stared at the sum, feeling both pride and pain. Had it been worth it? Did they ever truly understand what it cost me, not just in dollars, but in hope? That night I wrote another letter, this one just for me. A list of promises. No more paying for love. No more sacrificing my own happiness for people who don't appreciate it. No more letting guilt dictate my choices. I placed the note on top of the folder marked Family Support. Maybe, one day, Jessica would read it and understand. Before bed, I picked up the phone and left a voicemail for her. My voice was quiet, but steady. Jessica, it's Dad. I found your note. I wish you'd told me how you felt. I'm not angry. I just want you to know I love you. Call me when you're ready to talk. I set the phone down and listened to the winter wind rattling the windows, the house settling around me, empty but still standing. For the first time in a long while, I let myself cry, not just for what I'd lost, but for the hope that, maybe, something new could still grow from the ruins. The days after Christmas crept by, each one colder and quieter than the last. I tried to keep busy, organizing old photos, fixing a leaky faucet, walking Max around the block twice a day, but the silence in the house was always waiting when I came back. It was a good kind of lonely sometimes, peaceful in a way I hadn't felt in years. But other times, It gnawed at me, especially when the sun dipped behind the rooftops, and all that was left were my thoughts and the echo of a family that no longer seemed to need me. A few days after Christmas, I got a call from my lawyer, Frank Davidson. He'd handled everything for me since Linda passed: my retirement, my estate, even helped me sell my first house back in Dallas. Frank's voice was as calm and measured as ever. "Mike, how are you holding up?" I almost laughed. "Could be better, Frank. Christmas was a bust." He listened while I told him everything: the note, the cancelled trip, the emptiness left behind. When I finished, he paused. "Mike, you've always been generous. But sometimes you have to draw a line. You mentioned that house loan to Jessica and Ryan. You want to discuss your options?" "Yeah," I said, rubbing my forehead. "I need to know where I stand." Frank explained the legal side: how the house loan was documented, how I could recall it if they defaulted, how the monthly support was always up to me. It was a strange comfort, hearing everything reduced to contracts and signatures, as if all the pain of family could be contained by paperwork. "You're not alone, Mike," Frank said before he hung up. "This happens more than you'd think. Just remember, you decide how much more you give." I sat at my desk for a long time after that, looking at the spreadsheets, the pile of canceled checks and deposit slips. Part of me felt vindicated. Maybe it was time my family learned what boundaries really meant. That evening, as I was making dinner, the phone rang again. This time, the screen showed Jessica's name. My heart jumped, and for a second I just stared at it, unsure what to expect. "Dad?" Her voice was soft, already trembling. "Carter told me you're recalling the house loan. Canceling the cards." I kept my voice steady. "I'm just following the contract, Jess. Nothing more, nothing less." She sniffed, and I could tell she was close to tears. "You're our father. This isn't what families do." I thought of the note she'd left, the group chat I'd seen, the months of planning that must have gone into leaving me out. "Families don't leave each other behind at Christmas, Sither," I said gently. "We're even." She went quiet. I could almost hear her searching for the right words, trying to find some explanation that would make it all better. "We made a mistake, Dad. Please, let's talk before you do something we'll all regret." "We'll talk when you're ready to be honest, Jess. Not before." I hung up before I could change my mind. My heart pounded, but it felt good to finally set a boundary. For the first time, I was standing up for myself, not just going along to keep the peace. The next day, Frank stopped by with the paperwork. He didn't say much, just laid the stack of documents on my kitchen table and gave my shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "You're doing the right thing, Mike. Sometimes you have to remind people where the line is." "Thanks, Frank," I said. "I just wish it hadn't come to this." After Frank left, I called the bank using the script he'd written out for me. "This is Mike Sanders. Please remove Jessica Sanders and Ryan Turner from all accounts, effective immediately." The customer service agent didn't ask questions. He must have heard it all before. When I was done, I took 2 plates from the cupboard, set the table for one, and sat down to eat my lunch. There was something strangely peaceful about it, as if I was finally acknowledging my solitude instead of trying to fill it with noise and chaos. That evening, Jessica sent a text. "We're coming home tomorrow. Please, can we talk? Don't do anything until we see you." I didn't reply. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done. Some things, I realized, can't be fixed with an apology or a hasty promise. Before bed, I wrote in my journal, something Linda always encouraged me to do when life got complicated. "Love doesn't mean you never say no. Sometimes it means you finally do." The next day, Jessica, Ryan, and Emily pulled into the driveway just after noon. The Texas sky was cloudy and gray, a chill in the air. I watched from the living room window as they climbed out, their movements tentative. Emily clung to Jessica's hand, her blue coat making her look even smaller than usual. I opened the door before they could knock. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. They shuffled inside, tracking road salt across the entry rug. No one said anything for a long moment. Jessica's eyes were red. Ryan kept his hands in his pockets. Even Emily was quiet, looking anywhere but at me. Finally, Jessica spoke. "Dad, we're sorry. This all just got out of control." I motioned for them to sit. The Christmas tree was still up, the presents untouched beneath its drooping branches. "It wasn't the plan to cut you out," Ryan said, his voice halfway between defensive and ashamed. "We thought you'd enjoy some peace and quiet." "You could have told me," I replied. "You didn't have to take the trip I paid for and then leave me behind like an afterthought." Emily's eyes brimmed with tears. "I'm sorry, Grandpa. I didn't want to go, but Mom said it was for the best." I knelt beside her. "Emily, this isn't your fault. You're just a kid caught in the middle." I looked at Jessica and Ryan. "But you're not kids anymore. You made grown-up choices. Now you get grown-up consequences." Jessica sat down, looking defeated. "Please, Dad, don't take our house. Emily needs stability. We just made a bad call. Can't we fix this?" I handed her the notice for the recalled loan and the closed credit card statements. "I gave you a fair deal. 30 days. After that, the house goes on the market unless you pay me back." Ryan's jaw tightened. "So that's it? One mistake and you throw us out?" "One mistake?" I said, my voice rising for the first time. "It's not just a trip. It's years of acting like my help was your right, not my choice. You took and never thought about what it cost me." The room went quiet except for the hum of the heater. Emily reached into her backpack and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper, a drawing she'd made in Aspen, judging by the mountains. "I drew this for you, Grandpa. I miss you." I took the picture, my heart twisting. "Thank you, sweetheart. I miss you too." Jessica wiped her eyes. "We'll figure something out, Dad. I just hope one day you can forgive us." "I already do," I said quietly. "But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. And it doesn't mean going back to the way things were." They stayed a little while longer, but there was nothing left to say. When they left, the house felt emptier than ever. But somehow, I felt lighter. That night, I sat by the tree, Emily's drawing in my lap, thinking about all the years I'd tried to buy love, when all I'd really wanted was respect. The days that followed were filled with a new kind of silence, not just the absence of family, but the presence of boundaries finally drawn. The new year crept in quietly. No celebration, no midnight phone calls or fireworks, just the steady ticking of the living room clock and the faint glow of Christmas lights left hanging out of habit. Jessica and Ryan stayed away, except for short, businesslike emails, updates about the house, their jobs, Emily's new school project. They didn't ask for anything. They didn't offer much, either. There was an uneasy truce between us, held together by necessity, not affection. Emily texted every few days, always with something cheerful. "Hi, Grandpa. I miss you. I made the soccer team. Mom says hi." I always texted back. "Proud of you, kiddo. Love you. Doors always open." But with Jessica and Ryan, things were different. Jessica sent long emails sometimes, explaining, justifying, remembering better days. "Dad, remember when you helped me with my first car? You always said family sticks together. We made a mistake, but this can't erase everything." I read her words at night, sometimes twice, but rarely replied. I didn't have the energy to go in circles anymore. Meanwhile, Ryan was less apologetic. One morning, he called while I was out back fixing a broken fence post. His voice was hard, angry. "You're really going to sell the house from under your own daughter and granddaughter?" he demanded. I wiped sweat from my brow. "Ryan, you both signed the contract. I never wanted it to come to this. But I can't keep supporting people who don't respect me. You'll regret this, Mike. You're going to end up all alone. That made me almost laugh, not because it was funny, but because it was the oldest threat in the book. I'd been alone for years, even when the house was full. Days slipped by, and I kept busy, sorting old photos, repairing odds and ends, even starting a puzzle Linda bought years ago but never opened. The routine was comforting. I found peace in small victories: a leaky faucet fixed, a fresh loaf of bread baked, the gentle snore of Max sleeping by the fire. The legal process moved forward. Frank called often, letting me know the 30-day clock was ticking. The house could be put up for sale if Jessica and Ryan couldn't pay. I hated the thought of it, but I'd made my decision. Some lessons cost something to teach. One cold morning, Jessica showed up on my porch alone. Her eyes were tired, her face older than her years. I let her in, and we sat at the kitchen table, the place where so many family plans had been made. "I've been thinking a lot," she said quietly. "About everything. About you, about Mom. Maybe about Ryan. I don't know how we got here. Maybe I took too much for granted. Maybe I thought you'd always be there, no matter what." I let her talk, just listening. "I'm not asking you to forget what we did. I want to find a way back. For Emily's sake, if not for mine. She misses you. I miss you too." I looked at her then, seeing both the stubborn, hopeful girl I'd raised and the tired, worried woman she'd become. "You know, Jess, I never minded helping. I just wanted to feel like more than a wallet. Like you saw me as a person, not just a safety net." Tears welled up in her eyes. She reached for my hand, and for the first time in a long while, it felt like we were family again. "I'm sorry, Dad. I see you. I really do. I just wish it hadn't taken losing everything to realize what I had." I squeezed her hand gently. "We can't undo the past. But we can decide what comes next. That starts with honesty, and paying your debts." She nodded, wiping her cheeks. "We'll find a way, Dad. I promise." After she left, I felt something I hadn't felt since before Linda died, a small, flickering hope. Maybe this wasn't the end, just a painful new beginning. January dragged on with cold winds and gray skies. Jessica and Ryan tried to gather the money for the loan. I saw the "for sale" sign go up on Ryan's truck. Heard from neighbors they were looking for odd jobs. Emily's texts grew shorter. "Miss you, Grandpa? Mom's tired a lot. Dad's stressed." I always answered, never blaming her or putting her in the middle. Just, "I love you, kiddo. Hang in there." The day of the deadline came quickly. Frank called early, his voice gentle. "They haven't paid, Mike. The house is yours to sell. But it's your call. No one would blame you if you went through with it." I nodded, feeling strangely hollow. "I gave them every chance, Frank. Every single one." Word spread fast in the neighborhood. That evening, Ryan pounded on my door, his anger barely contained. "You think you're teaching us a lesson? You're just proving everyone right. You never cared about family, only about control." I stayed calm. "You don't get to rewrite history, Ryan." I cared. I gave everything I had. But you all made your choices. He shook his head, jaw clenched, then stormed off into the cold night. Later, Jessica called, her voice quiet and tired. "We're moving in with Ryan's parents for now. Emily's upset, but I can't blame anyone but myself. I'm sorry, Dad. For everything. It hurt. It always did. But it was a clean hurt, like a wound you finally let breathe." The next week, I called the realtor, and the house went up for sale. It was hard seeing rooms empty. "For sale" sign in the yard where Emily had learned to ride her bike. Neighbors dropped by, some offering sympathy, others just curious. A few said quietly they'd been through something similar, betrayed by the ones they loved most, forced to choose self-respect over keeping the peace. For the first time in years, I cooked real meals for myself, nothing fancy, but nourishing. I fixed the squeaky step Linda always complained about, replaced a broken window pane, started listening to old jazz records instead of the evening news. I found I didn't miss the chaos as much as I thought I would. Solitude, when chosen, was a different kind of quiet. One Saturday morning, Emily showed up with a small suitcase and a hopeful look. "Mom says it's okay if I stay with you for the weekend. Is that still all right, Grandpa?" I smiled and hugged her tight. "It's more than all right, sweetheart. This is still your home." We baked cookies, watched old cartoons, and played Scrabble at the kitchen table. Emily didn't ask about the house or her parents' arguments. She just wanted to be a kid. At night, I tucked her into the guest room and kissed her forehead. After she fell asleep, I sat in the living room, watching the last of the holiday lights twinkle in the window. Life hadn't turned out the way I'd planned, but it wasn't over, not by a long shot. There was still love to give, forgiveness to find, and maybe, one day, a new kind of family to build from the pieces left behind. Spring arrived slowly, the Texas air growing warmer, the days a little longer each week. I kept myself busy with chores and small projects, painting the fence, planting new flowers along the walkway, organizing boxes of old memories in the attic. Every day felt a little less heavy, a little less empty. Sometimes I caught myself humming as I worked, surprised to find a little joy sneaking back in after such a bitter winter. The "for sale" sign stayed up in the yard longer than I'd hoped, but I stopped looking at it with regret. Instead, I found myself thinking more often about what would come next, where I might go, what kind of life I could build if I truly let myself start over. I began to consider things I hadn't in years: moving closer to the coast, maybe joining a fishing club, signing up for a few classes at the community center. My calendar started to fill with small but real plans for the future. Jessica called every week now, sometimes just to talk, sometimes to vent about her new life squeezed into Ryan's parents' crowded house. Her voice was different, more humble and less hurried. "Dad, we're getting by. Emily's starting at her new school soon. Ryan picked up a couple part-time jobs. I'm doing freelance bookkeeping. I know things are different, but I want you to know, I get it now. I didn't understand what all those years cost you. I'm sorry." Some nights we sat quietly on the phone, saying nothing for minutes at a time, just sharing the silence. The old anger faded, replaced by a kind of understanding. Love, I realized, isn't measured in gifts or money. It's in the willingness to keep the door open even when it hurts. Emily visited whenever she could. The house felt alive again when she was there, her laughter filling the hallways, her questions about everything, her joy at simple things like pancakes on Sunday morning. We'd walk around the neighborhood together, talking about her new friends, her favorite books, her hopes for the future. Sometimes I'd catch her watching me with worried eyes, as if she was afraid I might disappear, too. I always made sure to hug her tight and say, "You'll always have me, kiddo." I started attending church again, joined a local bowling league, and signed up for a book club at the library. I met people who'd lived through their own family battles, people who understood loss and rebuilding from the ground up. I even started volunteering at the animal shelter once a week, finding a strange comfort in the routine of caring for creatures who didn't ask for much, just a little kindness and time. Eventually, the house sold to a young couple expecting their first child. On my last day, I walked from room to room, saying a private goodbye to each space. I paused longest in the living room, hand on the wall where Linda's favorite painting used to hang, letting all the memories, good and bad, wash over me. Then I locked the door one last time and left the keys with the realtor. My new apartment was small but full of light, just a few blocks from a park and a little diner where some of the old shipyard guys still gathered. I put up a few family photos, Linda's gentle smile, Emily's school portrait, one of Jessica from her college graduation. Not as a shrine to what I'd lost, but as a quiet celebration of what I'd once been lucky enough to have. One sunny afternoon, Jessica and Emily stopped by, just the two of them. Jessica handed me an envelope. Inside was a check, small, but honest. "It's the first payment for the debt," she said. "We're not asking for anything, Dad. I just want you to know we're serious about making things right, even if it takes us years." I hugged her for a long time. "I never stopped loving you, Jess. But I had to learn to love myself enough to say no." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "I get that now. And I promise, I'll never take you for granted again." After they left, I sat out on the balcony, the sun warming my face, and realized I finally felt free. Not from my family, not from my past, but from the old belief that love had to be bought, earned, or begged for. I started filling my days with things that made me feel alive again. I took a bus trip with some of the bowling guys down to the Gulf, learned to make sourdough bread from a retired Navy cook in my building, and started thinking about getting a dog to keep Max company. There were still hard days, of course. Some mornings, I woke up missing Linda so much it hurt to breathe. Sometimes, the ache of what I'd lost snuck up on me out of nowhere. A song on the radio, the smell of cinnamon rolls, a forgotten birthday card from Emily at the bottom of a drawer. But I let myself feel it, and then I let it go. I could see now that the adventure wasn't over. Maybe it was only just beginning. On Emily's birthday, Jessica invited me to their new rental apartment. We ate cake on paper plates, and I watched Emily blow out the candles, her face shining with hope. Jessica handed me a cup of coffee, and for a moment, peace settled between us. It wasn't the kind that comes from pretending nothing happened, but the kind that grows from hard lessons and honest forgiveness. That night, back at home, I wrote a new entry in my journal. "Love given freely is the only kind that lasts. It's not measured in dollars, but in honesty, respect, and forgiveness. I am old enough to know the difference, and finally wise enough to choose it." The seasons changed again, spring blending into a bright, sticky Texas summer. By now, my days had a gentle rhythm: morning walks in the park, afternoons volunteering or reading, evenings spent on the little balcony with Max, listening to distant laughter from the playground below. Life was simpler, quieter, and, for the first time in a long while, my own. Jessica kept her promise. Each month she sent what she could toward the debt, and though the amounts were small, they felt like a symbol of something bigger: responsibility, respect, a slow rebuilding of trust. She called every week, sometimes just to share a funny story about Emily, sometimes just to listen as I rambled about my garden or the latest antics at the animal shelter. Emily spent as many weekends with me as her parents' busy schedules allowed. Our new rituals became the highlight of my weeks: baking bread, feeding the ducks, playing cards at the kitchen table. She loved to draw, and soon my fridge was covered with her masterpieces, every one signed. "Love you, Grandpa." One afternoon, as we sat on a bench by the river, Emily leaned against me, her head on my shoulder. "Grandpa, are you sad we don't live in the old house anymore?" I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Sometimes. I miss the memories, but I don't need the house. I have you, and that's what matters." She squeezed my hand, her small fingers warm in my palm. "I'm glad we have you too." That evening, after Emily went home, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened: the heartbreak, the anger, the loneliness, and finally, the new understanding that had begun to grow. I realized that losing the illusion of family had forced all of us to find the real thing: love that didn't depend on money or gifts, but on showing up, owning our mistakes, and forgiving what couldn't be fixed. By late summer, Jessica's life looked different. She and Ryan had found a rhythm in their new place. Their marriage was quieter, but stronger for everything they'd weathered. Jessica didn't ask me for anything anymore, except my company and the occasional advice. Ryan even called sometimes, not to apologize but to share a story about Emily or talk about a project at work. There was a new humility in his voice, a recognition that families could break and mend, but only if everyone put in the work. One Sunday, the whole family came to my apartment for dinner. It wasn't a grand holiday or a special occasion, just an ordinary meal: spaghetti, garlic bread, salad, and laughter echoing off the walls. For the first time, I felt no pressure to impress, no expectation to fill every silence or fix every problem. I could just be myself, a father, a grandfather, a man still learning how to live on his own terms. After dinner, Emily climbed into my lap, clutching a battered old storybook. "Read to me, Grandpa?" she asked. I nodded, my voice steady as I read. Jessica and Ryan sat close, listening. The evening sunlight slanted through the window, painting the room in gold. For a moment, I let myself hope that this honest, imperfect togetherness was what family was always meant to be. When they left that night, Jessica hugged me at the door, holding on a little longer than usual. "Thank you, Dad, for everything, but mostly for not giving up on us." I looked at her, finally seeing not the child who needed rescuing, but the woman who'd learned how to stand on her own. "You're welcome, Jess. Just remember, love isn't about keeping score. It's about showing up, even after the mistakes." She smiled through tears, and in her face I glimpsed both the daughter I'd raised and the friend I'd found in her all over again. After they were gone, I sat on the balcony with Max at my feet and the stars overhead, feeling something I hadn't felt in years, a sense of peace. I knew there would still be challenges, regrets, days when the old loneliness crept back in. But now, I understood something I never had before. My worth was never measured in how much I gave, but in how much I loved, and allowed myself to be loved in return. As summer faded, I wrote one final entry in my journal. Family isn't perfect. It's not about money or grand gestures. It's about forgiveness, about starting over, about saying yes to hope even after hope feels lost. I thought I'd reached the end of my story, but it turns out, there's always another chapter if you're brave enough to keep turning the page. And as the sun set over the city, I raised my cup of coffee to the memory of all that was lost and to the promise of everything still to come.